My name is Luke Gannon. I organize in East and Midtown Phillips, so the neighborhood right across from Hiawatha, Minneapolitan, so I'm sure you're very familiar with the neighborhood. And as an organizer, one of the most valuable lessons I have learned is the power of really strong, localized communities. At the heart of whether that's in transit, whether it's in the environment, whether it's in relationship building. And I feel like this book is a perfect example of what strong localized communities are and what they can be. And so that's why I'm just so thrilled and honored to be in conversation today with my friend and the author of Câmbio, Taylor Lahey. Taylor writes so thoughtfully about these networks of connection. And what I think he really focuses on is mutual care, which is just such an important part of our neighborhoods, our communities, our cities, our states, our country at its best. One of the things that when I first read it, what struck me was the ambiguity of the places and the names of this book. So for example, it's the child, the old man, it's a neighborhood in a city. Taylor, I feel like that's a very specific language to use. Can you talk about that choice?
Yeah, so the idea was that I wanted to write a story that could be told around fires anywhere in the world. That was the design of the story. And I wanted the storyteller to either use that simple language or just input their input names, whatever that felt right for the community that it was being told in. There was also the city. There's other things that are basically proper nouns. Bus token is capital B and capital T. The exchange is a capital E. The idea is that these have their own heartbeat, their own proper noun meaning in this context. And I wanted to call out that significance. And also to really question, maybe for a parent reading, why would that be capitalized? What is there a deeper significance? What actually has life in the world that this book exists in?
I'm always interested in this question of scale. And your book is a neighborhood in a city, right? Can you talk about why you chose to write at the scale of a neighborhood as opposed to, a city in a state or, yeah.
Right. When I did research on this book and I went to Curitiba, where the real exchange is based from, the Green Exchange, also Câmbio Verde in Portuguese, I visited 4 of 107 locations where this exchange actually exists. And I often thought about what would it look like if we pulled out regionally with a lens and saw this all happening, this story take place. And that starts to muddy things up. And naturally, as an audience member, we're really interested in the psychology of one character. And I thought, what would it be like to zero in on the psychology of one neighborhood and the well-being of one neighborhood, and not think about the scale of multiple neighborhoods getting activated.
When I was doing a little bit of research on Curitiba, I realized it's a huge city. It's really big. And, my thought is always how do you make something work at that scale, right? In 2 million people, or even at the city of Minneapolis and 300,000 people, right? So, and you said there are multiple locations. So this is working in every neighborhood. How is it collectively working at that larger scale in Curitiba?
So there's a centralized coordination, I just say agent. And that is an initiative within the city of Curitiba. That's just simply the Green Exchange. Their resources are trucks. And to make it very clear, today is recyclables. You could exchange recyclables for produce. They pop up in locations all over Curitiba in neighborhoods. And it's usually on the street. It's on maybe a grass patch. It doesn't really necessarily have to stop traffic, but it's extremely conveniently placed for the neighborhood it is serving. So it makes it really lightweight to run. You could go to a neighborhood, pop up, you have your stuff that you're going to exchange, there's the produce that's going to be traded, as well as they collect the trash right there. When the event is done, there's no sign of it. And I think that's like one reason why it's so successful, is that doesn't have to be infrastructure put down or resources moved to make this thing work. I got to meet like the current director and observe a bunch of green exchanges and talk to the urban planners there, and just validate the story. The best though was going to a pawn shop where we bought a packet of the bus tokens that were given through a different program. If you worked full-time anywhere, the city subsidized a monthly stipend for bus transit. It was awesome. And so I bought this packet, I have it at home, of 30 tokens, bus tokens, and they would talk about how people would hoard them, they would hide them, they would put them in places because they would save them because they have a value, not even a perceived value, a literal value. And people remember, if they didn't need those tokens, they would just go to a magazine stand and exchange it for real real and reais. And that was really fascinating because it was so inundated in the culture that you could just take these tokens, which had its own value at most stores, at smaller stores, but you could also just exchange it back for real. And that was proof of a secondary currency working in that context, in that time.
I love these images. I don't know, Taylor, if you would go
Sure.
back a couple to the glow. I just want to be able to see those colors. Yeah, okay, awesome. So this is the glow. It's a really foundational and kind of magic part of the book. I'm excited for you guys to get your hands on it because it's really nice to look up close. Can you, what's going on with the glow? Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Ryan and I looked at a bunch of images of different forms of enlightenment or just phases, like from different religions and spiritual practices. We pulled from Christianity and Buddhism, and of course just like our backgrounds in art history, both having studied it. And there's something about characters in sacred texts where they have some sort of halo around them, and that's simply the foundation of it. And then we found colors that worked based on those references, and we landed here. What's more as important as the colors, of course the colors are important, it does offer the visual magic, but it's this easeful smile. I've grown up in a time where people could be creepy, and being looked at could feel really uncomfortable. And honestly, something that Ryan and I embraced is like, how could this expression be so disarming and kind that it's a joy to look at, to turn back to and be like, yeah, I want to be looked at that way, and of course in the right context. And there are a number of iterations of us trying to get this expression right. And some people are like, oh, whoa, are you sure about that? And what was odd is like some kids were just like, I love this spread. And that was very affirming.
Just so telling of like what we all really want.
I thought it was such a nice choice for these close-ups to be from a low angle point of view of the child, because a lot of the rest of them are pretty high, or like you're seeing the picture from but then to just drop right into that experience, we all know what that feels like, and we all want our elders to look at us like that. You
Right.
know how nice, that's just lovely.
I feel like the crux of a lot of this book is about what money means in our economies, in our communities, in our relationships. There are a couple lines you have: money that everyone can earn, and at one point, money like magic.
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk about those lines and kind of get at the question, is money bad? Is money good?
I have a strange background. The last place I worked was a crypto company, and we would tell a version of this. We told the basis of this story to ourselves, to people outside of in the greater crypto community, and the belief was that you could base money on a bunch of different things. And this story proved, not Câmbio, but the Curitiba bus token proved that a token could be an abstraction of a lot of different things. It could be based on the cleanliness of your community, the health of the forests around you, if you're willing to agree on that as a community. And I thought that was just absolutely nuts. Money that everyone could earn is based on, it's commentary on our financial system at its core. It's very simple, but what it really means is that all of our jobs, unless if you're working in a really special place, you go in debt working for that company and then you get paid. And the fact that in this system, you could pick up litter, something that we all value, that we all want, we agree to want in the community. You could use your underutilized resources, which is your ability to pick it up and earn something without having to be a citizen from anywhere, to not have to have residence, to not have to speak a certain language, look a certain way. It's just our agreement that the litter matters, and we were going to reward you for taking care of that. That is super powerful, I think. It's really special, especially if you, for that context, yeah, of course, like, public transportation really matters to this community at this point in time, but access to local produce, like organic local produce, is that's even more difficult to get, even in this context of modern America. So I thought that was very elegant. In terms of magic, yeah, that speaks to the ability to just reimagine what else could we base money on, and we move it away from gold, away from war, away from oil. What could we put in the center of that? So it's more of a prompt.
Like that, I'm gonna put that prompt back at you. Like, apart from litter, what are other things that could be at the center of that?
So I did a proof of concept event called the Bike Exchange. I applied it to Santa Cruz. And Santa Cruz, similar to Minneapolis, though the terrain is different, there's a very strong bike culture. A lot of people own multiple bikes. And I decided to put unused bikes at the center of it, or I guess to put bike culture at the center of it and have the outcome of the community exchange, the work that goes into it to lead towards bikes that can be given to those who need it. That I put 7 organizations together, and I found a mechanic organization, a mechanic group, a donor group, and I did it out of order, that's why I'm doing this, and a recipient group. And I found a bigger organization that would offer incentive rewards for everyone that participated. Some people just got bikes, which is awesome, but everyone else who participated got a B-Cycle ride pass, which is a e-bike city ride pass. So you wouldn't leave empty-handed, you were acknowledged for your work. Mechanics, of course, got pizza and then not of course, but we offered them pizza and an after party at a brewery, and they felt really acknowledged for that, because they've done events like that without getting anything in return. And all it was simply weaving together these possibilities. I love seeing, just like in Curitiba, have the mode of exchange, the medium of exchange be based around our basic of needs in modern living. So I can imagine like access to internet, clothing, food, transportation. Those are things that we could all agree are important and we could all use. And if we can't use it, we could of course give it to someone. It doesn't take, you don't have to go far to find someone that would need it. So, and we also live in excess. So I believe that we could take care of each other if we were to move some of these resources and products around that we already own. So yeah, those are just a few ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love too that it's not so siloed. Like sometimes it's easy to think about gift giving as like just in transit. But especially in your example of the bike exchange program in Santa Cruz, it's both about the food and it's about giving bikes and it's about people riding e-bikes. So it's kind of like the cross-pollination between, transit, between our food sovereignty, and that's how it can really become interconnected. I want to pivot a little bit back to the characters and talk a little bit more about the glow and the evolution of the glow by the end of the story, and specifically its relationship to the child.
Yeah.
And sort of his character arc in understanding the glow. Can you talk about that arc in your process in creating that?
I believe the child just has a moment of insight that the old man reveals to the child. In fact, I studied koans a bit while writing this book, and the idea of a koan in meditation is you read a story or a poem, and it's nonsensical to a point. The idea is when you're meditating on it, you finally have a moment of enlightenment or insight, and it's always with a master too. So there is certainly a elder, apprenticeship master relationship in the story between the old man and the child. And for the child, the idea is that he goes through a self-centered vision idea of what the glow can be, or the outcomes of the glow, which would be the bus tokens, and how it could bring him his own individual prosperity. And by the end of it, the old man kind of like, whacks him upside the head and figuratively, and says like, don't you see, like even the bus tokens are something that are just the fruit of this very fertile soil, that in which all this other good comes from. The cleanliness of the neighborhood, the ability to now use green spaces to play games, to be able to transport in and out. That was built by us investing in these set of agreements, really. I mean, you could say philosophy, but all it is just we're agreeing that this is important. We're going to reward people for doing that. Here are these additional outcomes that build community trust, community resilience, and it's amazing that one of those percolations just happens to be money.
Can you talk a little bit about your process working with Ryan, the artist? And yeah, how did this is a very specific style. How did that come to be?
So Ryan's very talented. We met in animation school. He had already worked for Cartoon Network, and we all, I didn't know this at the time, we all sign up for advanced character design, and really, really talented character designers are in it. They're all gunning for this internship at Pixar. And Ryan ended up getting it, and he went through his style got shaped into a lot of the Pixar style, a lot of the lead character designers there. And some of this is informed by that time when he worked on Onward, if you know that film. I have a very different connection to my illustrator in writing a book. Most children's authors don't get to meet their illustrator. That's dealt with by the agent or the publisher. And I tell people I'm that friend in your friend group that says like, but what if we just do it? And I pulled the people around me. Happen to be in a community that's very visually gifted. And I hired Ryan. I worked with a designer to get the book to the point I liked it. And even my editor was a friend from college who just teaches high school English. So we just pushed as far as we could go. And on occasion, I would go to a publisher and be like, is this good? And they're just like, this is pretty good, but it's too long. We're not going to pick it up. I'm like, screw you guys. I'm gonna just publish this and print it locally in Santa Cruz. And that's actually what happened. We printed at a local printer, and we'd sell copies that way. Yeah. And then we moved, and then I moved into working with Blue Bloom, my publisher now.
How are you hoping for Câmbio to translate to other cultures and to other contexts, and what's the through line that if you can't relate to the creek, to the field, to the neighborhood, to the relationships that are described in this book, what are you hoping will make it to other people as they read it in their own environments?
Maybe it would have to be caveated with a little instruction by me, but to have it just be just guidelines in which you could tell your own version of this story. I know geographically, this doesn't take place in a desert. That could be something that, there's different geographical features that could be swapped out. It could definitely be an old woman, a female elder instead of an old man. It could be, I chose the word child for there not to have a gender or a sex for the character. It just happened to have a real percolation that really embraces a lot of Curitiba culture, and from my lens and my experience and having my experiences there. And I wanted that to be uniquely Curitibano, but I would hope that other creatives, other caretakers of the story really would be empowered to tell it in different ways and to put it into their cultural and geographical context.
I've heard a lot of writers and artists say your work is never finished, right? It's never done. How did you, at what point were you okay, this is ready to go out into the world? Do you feel like this is just a first iteration of something?
I've heard people say when you finish a book, as an author, you say to yourself, oh, now I know how to write that. And I luckily published a second edition of it. And I got a lot of stuff I withheld after reading it a number of times, and I got some of those changes in there. But there's still some parts that I'm I maybe would change a few things there. I also think there is a divine form of what a piece of writing could take. And that's actually what I learned from my friend who edited the first version, who's just a high school teacher. After I told him about the style I want to hit, he would nail some of these lines and be like, I could see him just go, oh, that's so good. And I'm like, what is that? He's like, based on the style and how you want to write and what the story is trying to do, that's, I think, the best form. And that was what I started like searching for as I wrote this book. That's also another thing you have to find too as an author.
To add on to that, how did you detach from that? Like, because I know that sharing, putting your work out there, your art, whatever it may be, it can be very vulnerable and like, I'm not sure if you've received any criticisms or not, but it can be a very daunting thing just because you're now going to be perceived and it's completely out there. How are you able to detach from that work?
Show it to people that care for your heart and that you trust their taste and you believe are part of the demographic you want to get your product out to or your story out to, whatever it is. And then get it in front of a stranger and try to find something they really don't like. Being open to be like, what don't you, I thank you for smiling, but like, what do you not like about it? And kind of search out that criticism.
And I'm so curious how many book readings that you've had children listen. Like, what is your experience? Because they're smart, they see things we don't, and I'm just so curious about your experiences with the kids.
The one line in a packed library, I read the line, when the child arrived at the exchange, he heard some great news. Shops are now accepting bus tokens in exchange for goods. What? And I was like, yeah. And that was really perfect.
Okay. Well, I think that's a perfect place to wrap up. I love this question that Taylor asked, which is, I just would love to take back to, for each of you to take back to all of your communities, your families, your friend networks, your place of worship, whatever. But is, what do we all value? And I think about this a lot in my organizing space and thinking about organizing my block. And it's amazing how it's always like the same thing. People value beautiful spaces. People want clean streets. People want to be housed. People want, clean environments. And then what's the next step after that? So to take that back to your own lives, and I think this is just such a beautiful book that is so representative of that really deep, like heart level of what do we value and what can we actually do about it in our communities.